Hello and welcome to Unacademy. Welcome to another session of Economy Weekly Recap, wherein we are going to take up all the important economy related articles from different newspapers and will be analyzing these articles. And for this week, these are the 8 very important articles that I'll be analyzing. Now, before I start the initiative, before I start discussing all these 8 topics, a very important announcement. We are very happy to announce an Academy Current Affairs Navigator You Can initiative, wherein it will be a comprehensive current affairs course. Respective subject faculties will be taking these classes, and there will be an exhaustive coverage of all the current affairs which are appearing in different newspapers, Press Information Bureau, Yojana Magazine, Kurukshetra, Economic and Political Weekly, Down to Earth, etc. Under this, every Tuesday to Friday, 4 days, there will be classes from 9:30 p.m. to 11:30 p.m. For further details, please check out the link for the same initiative. With this caveat, let's start the discussion. The first very important article: Google removes various apps from its app store. This appeared in Hindu newspaper, and in the last couple of days, there has been a lot of discussion regarding the same. Let's try and understand the importance of the article. Now, to understand what Google has done, why Indian companies are upset with all of this, you need to understand the background to this. Back in the year 2020, back in the year 2020, Google introduced a policy very famously referred to as Google Play billing system. Google Play billing system. And under this policy, let's say there is a company which has created an app. It has listed the app in the Google Play Store. And when this app is downloaded by the customers, and the customers want to subscribe, they want to pay money and get the services from the company. So whenever they will subscribe to the services, certain amount of money should be paid to Google. In simple terms, whenever the app is listed in the store and it is used by the customers, any amount of money that is paid by the customers on this app, this is very important, on the app, whenever they will purchase any services, or let's say certain goods, that is digital goods, then the money part of that has to be paid to the Google company. Now, various Indian companies were opposed to this policy of the Google, and they approached Competition Commission of India, a very important authority for the civil services examination preparation. When they approached this authority, the authority looked at the policy of the Google and stated that no, this policy is arbitrary in nature. Because the Google has a dominant position in the market, it is abusing its dominant position. And that is the precise reason Competition Commission of India imposed a heavy penalty on the Google company, and it basically stated that the company cannot have such a policy where it is very arbitrary in nature and it is abusing its dominant position. And following the order of Competition Commission of India, Google changed the policy. In the new policy, Google Play Store billing system, they stated that if the company wants to sell their app or basically list their app on the Google platform, that is a Play Store, now there is an option. The option is if the customers will download this app and if they want to subscribe to certain services, if they want to purchase certain services provided by the company, a third party payment service will be made available. That is, in simple terms, imagine my company app is listed in the Play Store. You can download this app, and when you're about to make a payment, now you can simply choose to make the payment using somebody else other than Google billing system. So that alternative option, that another option was provided. But various companies even opposed the new system. Their contention was, under the Google billing system, the charges are in the range of 15 to 30%. Under the Google billing system, the payment, whatever the companies will receive, out of that 15 to 30% they will pay to Google. Now, Google has introduced a new system wherein a third party payment system can be used, a third party service provider will be used, using which you will make a payment, but out of this 11 to 15%, sorry, 11 to 26%, 11 to 26% of the charges collected by the company, now they will have to pay to Google. Many of you will ask me, sir, why is that so? Why is that? Even if the third party payment is used, why is that the company has to pay money now? Google company said this 11 to 26% will be the service charge. The 11 to 26% will be service charge. What is the service charge here? Because the Google company is making lot of investments. It is making lot of investments in maintaining all of this infrastructure, improving the Play Store facility, etc. The Google company stated, I will need to collect 11 to 26% of the money that is collected by these service providers in the form of service charge. Again, this policy, many experts or the company owners were opposed to this policy. Their argument was, no doubt, instead of collecting 15 to 30%, now you are collecting 11 to 26%. No doubt. The charges have come down. But the issue is that along with these charges, now I'll have to pay for the third party payment service provider. I will have to pay certain charges there also. And as such, already the customer acquisition cost for me is very, very high. I'm raising lot of funds from various investors from the market, and lot of that money I'm already paying to Google because I'm using lot of services. And in addition to that, if I pay in the range of 11 to 26% plus other payment charges or gateway charges, most of my revenue I'll have to spend in these kind of charges only. My revenue, the earnings of the company after all of this will be very, very less. Citing that, these investors or these companies approached high courts. Now the issue is in the Supreme Court. It is also being taken care of or heard at the Competition Commission of India. At the same point of time, what Google has done is, it has identified certain apps of Indian companies. They're using the term startups. And these companies' apps have been delisted. Delisted in the sense, these apps have been removed from the Play Store. Now, once these were removed, and this announcement was done by the Google company, if you went on to the Play Store and searched, if you search for this app, the Play Store says this app is not available in the Play Store. So that was announcement done by the Google. Now against this, various startups whose apps have been removed, they have again stated they will check the legal recourse. They will check whatever legal options are available to them. Their argument is why it was done suddenly, why it was done on Friday, that too. And when the Supreme Court of India is about to hear the matter, about to hear in the sense, please understand this. These companies have approached the Supreme Court of India, and Supreme Court of India stated that I will hear the matter, I'll take up the issue, but I will not give you interim relief. For time being, I will not give you any kind of relief. So this was again the argument that was used by the Google company to say that Supreme Court of India itself has not given any relief to them. Supreme Court of India is agreeing to our viewpoint, and that is what has been stated by the Google company. Along with that, they have stated that these companies have been given for a time period for more than 3 years now. All of this has started back in the year 2020. So these companies have been given a time period of more than 3 years, and after 3 years, this decision has been taken by Google to delist these apps which have not been paying money to the Google company for using their services. Now, what are the pro viewpoints and counter viewpoints? You'll have to look at both the sides of the coin here. What are the arguments in favor of the Google company? Are there any supporters of the Google? Of course, yes, there will be certain viewpoints supporting Google. The argument is that Google is a private sector company. And because these companies are utilizing the services provided by the private sector company, the private sector company runs behind profits, hence it will impose as much high charges as possible, and they will collect in order to shore up, in order to increase their profitability. Second point, Google says we are not doing this only to these apps. What about other apps? All the other apps have already accepted our terms and conditions. And if they are falling in line, if they are accepting our terms and conditions, if I give an exception, if I provide a special treatment to these companies, it is not a uniform treatment to all of them. So I'll be biased. I will have to treat some of them favorably and some of them unfavorably. So these are certain arguments in the favor of the policies of Google. Having said so, what are the counter arguments? What are the arguments against the policies of the Google? Point number one, Google has a very dominant position in Indian market. How so? Most of us will use Google services. We will use Google services. For example, in terms of search engine, we will use the services provided by the Google. In terms of smartphones, that is very important. In terms of smartphones, more than 90% of the smartphones which are sold in India are basically using Android operating system. And Android operating system is basically the system which has been provided by Google company. So by having a dominant position in the market, because they have a dominant position in the market, they are abusing the dominant position. In fact, various startup companies have accused the company or have accused the Google company of imposing Lagan tax. I'm pretty sure all of you remember the movie Lagan. The startup founders, the owners of the startup companies have accused Google of imposing Lagan tax. So that is one criticism against this company. And this is not the first time that Google has come into the crosshairs, has been criticized for these kind of policies. Earlier also, there was one criticism. In fact, this case was heard by Competition Commission of India and orders have been imposed, wherein the Google company used to mandate the TV manufacturers to have the Google suite. That is basically the apps of the Google were pre-installed. Even in the mobile phones, the apps of the Google are pre-installed. So there is a criticism against such policies of Google company, or even for that matter Apple company, where they are trying to use their dominant position in the market. Now what is the way forward then? What should be done in this context? One recommendation that has been provided is, why doesn't government open or let's say promote an app store which is, right, again the name that has been pitched in, the name that has been given as of now is the Bharat App Store. But again, please understand this, government can do that, but this will be too much of interference of the government in the functioning of a private sector or a sector where interference is not required to such an extent. Then what is the other way forward? We will have to have a separate or let's say a private, another app store being developed for Indian companies. Has it been tried? Of course, yes. There are multiple app stores which are already present, but these are not pre-installed. I repeat, these are not pre-installed in the smartphones that we purchase. Because the Google has a tie-up with the smartphone manufacturers to have these app stores as a pre-installed suite or pre-installed applications in the new mobile phone. Now, whenever the customers will purchase a mobile phone, they want to download an app, not in the Google app, but let's say they want to download it from some other app store. because they are opposed to the policies of the Google. The concern has been that when they will try to do that, download the app from someone else, or let's say some other app store, the mobile phone will display a message, a warning message saying that, are you sure you want to download this app? What if it will harm your mobile, etc., etc. And that is the precise reason why many of the experts say that despite many private sector companies or private sector investors pitching, promoting other app stores, there has been very less demand for such app stores. So these are certain very, very important points regarding the policies of Google and what is the opposition of Indian startups against these policies. Now, the second article, State Bank of India has published, has come out with a report. The economic research part or the wing of State Bank of India has come out with a survey which states that the poverty in case of India has come down to 4% to 5%. Now, what is the importance of the article? Should you read this article? Is there any connection to UPSC examination? Let's understand it. First point, I'm pretty sure all of you heard of the Household Consumption Expenditure Survey. HCES, Household Consumption Expenditure Survey. Now, as a result of this survey, what were the findings? As a result of conducting this survey, what were the findings? The Household Consumption Expenditure Survey stated that the monthly per capita expenditure has improved, has increased in the last 1 decade, and the latest data shows that in case of rural India, the MPCE is 3773 rupees, and in case of urban India, the MPCE is the 6459, that is 6459 rupees. So this is the latest data that has been published in the survey that has been conducted. Now, what is the importance of this data? Various experts looked at the data and stated that if the household monthly per capita expenditure has increased in the last 1 decade, it should simply mean that people are earning more money as well as spending more money. I hope you understand this. Compared to what it was done in the last 1 decade, if people are spending more money now, monthly per capita means per person how much monthly is the expenditure, which means people are earning more money and spending more money. And if they are going to spend more money, it automatically means a lot of people would have moved out of poverty. Very simple logic. A lot of these people would have moved out of poverty over a period of time. Now, this is point number one. Point number two, right? Is there any data to back this up? What was the last estimation of poverty? Understand this carefully. Although now Government of India mainly focuses on the multi-dimensional poverty index. Multi-dimensional poverty index published by Niti Aayog. Earlier, the last official survey, last official estimate of poverty through a committee was done, and that committee is Tendulkar Committee. And as per the recommendations of Tendulkar Committee, please remember this, the recommendations were, if the expenditure is 816 rupees and let's say the data will be 1000 rupees in case of rural and in case of urban. If the expenditure is below 816 in rural part of India and below 1000 rupees in urban part of India, such population will be classified as below poverty line. In simple terms, poor population. And what SBI has done is, it has taken the HCES data, household consumption expenditure data, and it has also taken the Tendulkar Committee data, and it has extrapolated. It has basically extended these numbers after adjusting for inflation. And based on this, they have now arrived at poverty data. Please remember this. It will be, after adjusting for inflation, it will be 1622 rupees for rural India And for urban India, after adjusting for inflation, it will be 1929 rupees. So 1622 rupees in rural India and 1929 rupees in urban India. So after extrapolating, adjusting this for inflation, the SBI research wing says that new poverty line will be 1622 rupees for rural and 1929 rupees for urban India. Now, what is the utility of this data? How do you understand all of it? So look at the consumption expenditure survey data and as well as the SBI updated poverty line data. Based on these, what they have concluded is that if you adjust this and compare this with the expenditure done by all of these households, they have come to a decision. The poverty numbers in case of India will be in the range of around 4 to 5%. It will be around 4 to 5%. This is based on two sets of data. And if you look at, according to this report, then how much will be the urban poverty as well as the rural poverty? They have recommended, or they have basically made an observation, and they've said, according to Tendulkar committee, the poverty rates in rural India was 25.7%, in urban India was 13.7%. Now, if you take the recent data, that is MPCE data, and just extrapolate the Tendulkar committee poverty line, then in case of rural India, the poverty rate will be somewhere in the range of 7.2%, and urban India, the poverty rate will be around 4.6%. And overall, the poverty rate will be in the range of 4% to 5%. In fact, the report also says that if the new census data is conducted, we are yet to get the census data, latest census data, population census by the way. If you get the latest population census data, then it could be adjusted. Right now it is in the range of 4 to 5%, then it could be appropriately made adjusted, or it can be adjusted with the new census data. So this is what the State Bank of India report actually states. But having said so, having looked at this data, you simply consider this data as a sacrosanct. Is there any concern? Is there any problem with this kind of an estimate? Mr. Pranab Sen, remember the name of the person, Mr. Pranab Sen, very well known economist by the way. Mr. Pranab Sen, who is heading a committee to look at the statistics system in India, has stated that it is not appropriate. It is not appropriate to take Tendulkar committee and extrapolate the committee recommendation and then compare that with the MPCE data. Many of you will ask me, sir, why so? What is the problem in extrapolation and making a comparison? The argument that has been put forward by the economist is that the set of data or the methodology of collection are completely different. The methodology that has been followed by the authority to collect HCES data is different compared to the methodology that was followed by the Tendulkar committee earlier. And as such, the expert also has mentioned that we do not have the complete data released for HCES right now. It is just a small set of data which has been released. The complete details will be released in the coming days. So it is not correct to make a comparison and come to a conclusion. So these are certain very important points regarding the SBI report, which says that the poverty rates in India are in the range of 4% to 5%. Now the next article, Financial Intelligence Unit, FIU. FIU has imposed 5.49 crore rupee fine on the Paytm Payment Bank or Paytm Bank for PMLA lapses. It looks like the problems of Paytm company are not getting over. One more issue has arisen now. Financial Intelligence Unit, FIU. Please remember this, Financial Intelligence Unit, which is basically a body which will investigate. We'll look at it, don't worry. Which will investigate, has found that there have been instances where the Paytm Payment Bank has allowed a lot of transactions to happen, and as a result of these transactions, black money laundering has happened. Money laundering basically means converting black money into white money. So there are many transactions which have been allowed by this company or this Paytm payment bank without doing the right, let's say, background checks, and as a result of this, money laundering to a certain extent has been facilitated by the bank. And regards to those transactions, the Financial Intelligence Unit has imposed penalties to the extent of 5.49 crore rupees on the company. Now, what are the important points apart from this? Financial Intelligence Unit was established in the year 2004. Please remember, Financial Intelligence Unit was established in the year 2004. Why? What was the objective? This FIU has been established by the government in order to address the issue of money laundering in India. And the objective of FIU, the functions of FIU is basically to collect the data, to collect the data, basically put together all of this data from different sources. For example, they will collect the data from banking sector, they collect the data from various departments of the government, they collect the data from income taxes sources, etc. So they will collect the data from different sources, use all of this data and prepare reports, and basically ensure that all the other departments or all the departments which require access to such data is made available. So this is basically the role of Financial Intelligence Unit. And please remember, Financial Intelligence Unit basically reports to the Economic Intelligence Council. Economic Intelligence Council. Right? Remember all these points. Point number 2. The Financial Intelligence Unit is also a member of Egmont Group. It is also a member of Egmont Group. What is this idea of a Egmont Group? Remember this. Concept of Egmont Group was established back in the year 1995. It is basically a group of various countries around the world. More than 150 countries have come together. They have formed a group which is very famously referred to as Egmont Group. And the role of this Egmont Group is to collect the data and ensure that all the member countries will be having certain procedures, will be having certain systems in place in order to address the issue of money laundering. That is basically the whole idea related to the concept of Egmont Group. So these are the two very important points you should note regarding the Financial Intelligence Unit as well as the problems of Paytm Payment Bank. Now, based on this, I've given a question. Consider the following statements regarding FIU. It is a statutory body. No, it has been established through executive order of Government of India. It functions under the Ministry of Home Affairs. This statement is also wrong. FIU IND is a member of Egmont Group. FIU IND simply means Financial Intelligence Unit, India. So the third statement is correct. How many of the above statements is or are true? Only one of them is correct. Right option will be option A here. Let me go to the next article. Cabinet approves 75,000 crore free electricity solar scheme. Now, this scheme has been there in the discussion for multiple weeks now. It's been more than 1 month since the launch of the scheme, and finally, the cabinet has approved more than 75,000 rupees for the scheme. And please remember the scheme here, PM Surya Ghar Muft Bijli Yojana, PM Free Electricity Scheme. Now, what are the important points that you need to make a note of? Point number 1. This will be a scheme which is promoted by the government, under which we are going to promote harnessing of solar energy. That is, sunlight will be used and this will be converted into electricity. Point number 1. Point number 2, Government of India under the scheme will be incurring certain expenditure. How much of the expenditure? Government says it wants the houses, it wants various houses to invest and purchase solar panels, basically a solar setup using which they'll be harnessing the sunlight. But for this, one of the concerns historically, one of the issues has been that people do not have sufficient amount of money, and these systems are not cheaper in India. So on one side, people don't have sufficient amount of money and these are very costly. And even if they go to a bank, all the banks are not willing to provide loans. And in case of India, please remember, even the discoms, there is a criticism that even the distribution companies are not in favor of such schemes. Right? Why? They will end up losing lot of revenue. In order to address these kind of issues, Government of India says under this scheme, 60% of the cost, 60% of the cost will be provided in the form of subsidy. 60% of the cost will be provided in the form of subsidy, and remaining 40%, the customer, that is the house, can take a loan in the market. They can take a loan in the market, but more importantly, this loan will be collateral free loan. This loan will be collateral free loan, and second, this loan rate of interest will also be lower, somewhere in the range of around 7%. So Government of India says 60% of the subsidy or 60% of the cost I will provide, and remaining 40% you take a loan. This is a collateral free loan and the rate of interest is also lesser. Point number three, understand this carefully. This scheme will be applicable, or this scheme as of now will be implemented for a duration of 4 years. Starting financial year 24, that is financial year 24, then 25, 26 and 27. So from financial year 24 to financial year 27, the scheme will be implemented. And point number 4, this kind of a subsidy that the Government of India is providing, the subsidy that the Government of India is providing, is it available to any kind of the system that you will purchase? What if you purchase a 10 kilowatt of the system? Will government give you 60% of it in the form of subsidy? What if you purchase, let's say, 9 kilowatt of the solar system? Will government give you subsidy on that? Absolutely no. Please remember this. Government says the subsidy that Government of India has proposed will be made available only up to a system capacity of 3 kilowatt. If you install more than 3 kilowatt, government says they will not give you subsidy. This is the fourth very important point. Fifth very important point regarding the scheme, the government says the houses which are covered under this, 1 crore houses which are covered under this, they'll be provided 300 units of free electricity. 300 units of free electricity will be provided to the households. Sixth very important point, in order to make this scheme, in order to promote the scheme and make it available, right, so that the people will understand about the scheme, they will understand the importance of harnessing sunlight, etc. Government says the rural bodies which will promote the scheme, they will be incentivized. Government is providing incentives to the rural bodies and urban bodies which will promote this scheme in the part of their region. And apart from this, another very important point is even the banking sector in recent times. Earlier I said banking sector is not very much, will not provide all the loans that are needed for such a scheme. Even in the banking sector, now many of the banks have started following one of the two things. That is point number one, many of the banks are basically combining the loans for solar cells or loans for the solar systems along with the housing loan. They are combining these two components and they are issuing loans. And second, many of the banks under the model of ESG, environment, social governance. Under the concept of ESG, when they provide loans, they are trying to include these loans for solar systems as well. So these are certain very important points regarding the Pradhana Mantri free electricity scheme, which has been approved and the funds have been allocated by the government now. The next article, NBFC MFIs seek to revise household income norms for microfinance loans. Now, what are the important points? Point number one, what is the meaning of the term microfinance? What do you understand by the term microfinance? If you look at the RBI website, RBI defines microfinance loans as those loans which are provided for certain number of households, whose yearly income is not more than 3 lakh rupees. Please remember the number here. If a household does not cross a yearly income, annual income of more than 3 lakh rupees, for such houses, loans are provided by the banks, non-banks, etc. These are called as microfinance. In fact, please remember this. How much is the value of the loan? We will come to that. Just give me a second. And the second one is, these households, earlier the parameters, that is the threshold parameter for the households was different in rural India as well as urban India. But in the last couple of years, what RBI has done is, it has made it as a uniform threshold level. That is, please understand, earlier RBI, Reserve Bank of India, used to divide these households into rural households, then the urban households as well as semi-urban households. Starting 2022, that is in the year 2022, Reserve Bank of India said for rural households, urban households and semi-urban households, the threshold classification was different. It was 1.25 lakh for rural and it was considered to be 2 lakh rupees for urban and semi-urban. Reserve Bank of India has done away with this classification, and after 2022, when this announcement was done, instead of having different classification of threshold, we have a uniform classification of threshold, that is 3 lakh rupees. Now, whether you are urban, semi-urban or a rural household does not matter. The classification under which you will be covered for microfinancing loans is 3 lakh rupees. Right? That is annual income. Point number two, microfinance loans generally are provided up to 1.25 lakh. The loan value that is provided is up to 1.25 lakh. Now, many of you will be confused with the first statement and with the second statement. Listen to me carefully. If you want to take a loan under microfinancing, your annual income should not be more than 3 lakh rupees. But how much loan can you take under microfinance? Until very recently, it was 1 lakh rupees. 2019, Reserve Bank of India increased it to 1.25 lakh. That is basically the second point. Third very important point, microfinance loans are collateral free. In fact, RBI website itself says this, microfinance loans are collateral free loans. That is, whenever you take a micro loan like this, you do not have to provide any kind of collateral. These are certain very important points regarding microfinancing in India. Now, what is the importance of microfinancing? As per Reserve Bank of India, as per various committees, microfinancing provides a lot of loans, provides a lot of credit access to especially poor houses in India. The poor houses find it very difficult to get access to loans. And one of the reason is, these loans generally require collateral. These loans require a security. But under the concept of microfinancing, RBI has done away with the concept of collateral. And these banks will provide loans. And they can be banks, they can be NBFCs, etc. They can provide loans without requesting, without mandating any kind of collateral. So these are certain important points. Now, why this is there in the newspaper? There is a demand. There is a demand now that the threshold level which is kept at 3 lakh rupees, the threshold level which is kept at 3 lakh rupees for a household, this threshold level should be increased to 5 lakh rupees. I'll repeat my statement. The threshold level, that is the annual income limit, which has been kept at 3 lakh rupees, should be increased to 5 lakh rupees, so that more and more houses can be covered under the microfinancing. and more loans can be provided to these houses. Point number 2, which has been mentioned in the article, is the average size of the microfinance loans which are given has increased over a period of time. That is currently the average ticket size, that is basically average micro loan size which has been issued, it is in the range of around 47,000 rupees. Last year, at the end of the third quarter, it was somewhere in the range of around 41,000 crore, I'm sorry, 41,000 rupees, not crore, 41,000 rupees. And a year before that, in the third quarter, it was somewhere in the range of 39,000 rupees. So there has been an increased value of the loans, average size of the micro loans which have been issued, and more than 1 crore unique customers. I'll repeat my statement. More than 1 crore unique customers have been brought under the microfinancing segment as such. So looking at all of these points, there is a demand that NBFCs have demanded that the limit should be increased so that they'll be able to give more and more loans. Now, in addition to this, in the last 1 month, there has been one more point of discussion regarding microfinance institutions. Right? Make a note of this. RBI Deputy Governor, Mr. M. Rajeshwar Rao, Mr. M. Rajeshwar Rao has criticized many of these microfinance institutions. I'll repeat my statement. RBI Deputy Governor Mr. Rajeshwar Rao, in one of the speeches, criticized the microfinance institutions in India. What was the critical point? What was the criticism about? Please remember this. Microfinance institutions earlier were not allowed to charge a rate of interest of more than 24%. I'll repeat my statement. Earlier, the microfinance institutions were never allowed to charge a rate of interest of more than 24%. RBI in the year 2021, removed this particular limit and allowed the microfinance institutions to charge their own rate of interest. Now, the concern that has been raised by the Deputy RBI Governor is that there are many microfinance institutions in the market which are charging an exorbitant rate of interest, which are charging a very, very high rate of interest. And the RBI Deputy Governor has stated that if the microfinance institutions will not change their policies, then regulations shall be imposed regarding this. His argument was, when we impose the regulations, you will oppose it. You will criticize us. But on the other hand, if I want you to follow the policy correctly, you will transfer the rate of interest very quickly to customers whenever your cost of borrowing increases. But when your cost of borrowing will come down, you'll hesitate. You'll be very, very slow in transferring these benefits to customers. So that was one more point of discussion regarding microfinance institutions in the last 1 month. Now the next article, land, labor, capital, reforms top of agenda in the third term, states the finance minister. Now what is the basic idea? Let me take you to the concepts in microeconomics. We say there are 4 factors of production. I'm pretty sure the starting point of your journey in UPSC preparation, especially in Indian economy, will start from the concept of 4 factors of production. Sir, what do you mean by factors of production? Factors of production, I'll use a short form, FOP. Factors of production, FOP, represent what are the factors that are required to produce a good or a service. What kind of factors we will require, what kind of inputs we will require to produce a good or a service and sell it in the market. That is called as factors. And the factors are generally divided into 4 types. One is called as land, second one is labor, third one is capital, and the fourth one is entrepreneurship. Land, labor, capital, and entrepreneurship. Government of India, as per the statement given by the finance minister, which is to a very great extent correct, by the way, Government of India in the last couple of years has implemented various reforms under land, labor as well as capital. Now, the finance minister says that one, right, follow this carefully. One, in addition to these traditional factors of production, finance minister says there should be one more factor of production. I'll repeat my statement. In addition to these traditional factors of production, there should be one more factor of production, that is digital infrastructure. Digital infrastructure. Please remember, the digital infrastructure should be considered as one more factor of production. Point number two that has been mentioned by the finance ministry is that once the government is formed, once the new government is formed, for the third term, government will be implementing more reforms, more structural reforms, right, under the concept of land, labor as well as capital. So these are the two very important points which have been mentioned by the finance minister. Now, under the concept, UPSC can ask you, what do you mean by land? What do you mean by labor? What do you mean by capital? Be very careful here. The simple reason is, whenever you come across the term land, many of you will feel that, okay, land means land. Many of you ask me, sir, how do I define land? I feel land is nothing but land. But UPSC will ask you, what do you mean by land? Which of the following are part of land factor of production? How do I answer that? Please remember this. Land basically includes anything that is naturally available to us. I'll repeat my statement. Land simply means anything that is naturally available to us. For example, right, let's say minerals, the surface of the land, etc. What about capital? Capital simply means anything that is made by humans, made by us, which we will use it for production process. All of you are able to understand? Anything that is made by us, which we will use for production process, that is capital. So these kind of technical terms can be used by UPSC. Please be very careful. In addition to this, the finance minister has also mentioned the term digital infrastructure. Digital infrastructure. Right? And in the recent times, there has been a lot of discussion regarding digital public infrastructure, the DPI. They will use the term DPI, digital public infrastructure. In fact, there is one more name for this, India Stack. They will refer to this as well as the other factors as India Stack. What do you mean by India Stack? What do you mean by digital public infrastructure? Over a period of time, Government of India has invested a lot of money and developed certain digital infrastructure in India. And these are mainly in the nature of public goods. For example, Aadhaar. For example, eKYC, UPI, right, DigiLocker, etc. So, a lot of these digital infrastructures that have been developed by Government of India now put together, right, all of these technologies, they are calling this as a digital stack or India Stack or digital public infrastructure. And Government of India, in fact, is offering this India Stack to other countries. If they want to use these kinds of infrastructure, they are allowed to use after entering into agreement with the Government of India. So there is a lot of discussion regarding these points. Please remember this. How many of the following are part of Digital India Stack? I can use the term Digital India Stack, or else I can simply use the term India Stack. Aadhaar, DigiLocker and UPI. Yes, all the three are correct. Right option will be right option will be option C. All the three are included. All the three are true. All the three are correct. Now, next article, India to ban rice exporters from UN food relief tenders. What is the article all about? What is the issue all about? Point number one, in case of India, there is a concern of domestic inflation rate. Domestic inflation is a cause of concern. And one of the reasons, one of the causes of this higher rate of inflation in the domestic market has been the food commodities or food articles. Specifically within the food articles, the contribution in the last 1 year has also been done by rice. the prices of rice have increased by more than 13-14% in the last 1 year, and the food inflation has been on a higher side. The overall inflation has remained sticky because of these reasons. Now, point number two, government has already taken various measures. It has taken already various measures in order to address the inflation issue in India. In addition to these measures, now it is stated, this is not a official policy. It has been stated that government of India might not simply allow export of various types of rice qualities, specifically broken rice quality from India to rest of the world. Specifically, when I say India to rest of the world, please understand United Nations. United Nations has a program which is called as a World Food Program. WFP, World Food Program. Under the World Food Program, United Nations has been procuring huge quantity of rice from the Indian market. It has been procuring huge quantity of rice from Indian market. For example, please have a look at the data here. The United Nations has procured somewhere around 2 lakh tons. In recent times, it has procured somewhere around 2 lakh tons from Indian market itself. Because India is a major producer of rice, supplier of rice to the international market, various African countries are majorly dependent on India to export rice to their countries. And as such, government of India has clarified that. It has clarified that even today, government to government, that is from Indian government to another government, the export of agriculture commodities is allowed. That kind of export is allowed even today. But now the concern is that if United Nations under the World Food Program will procure more of rice from India, supply of rice in the domestic market might go down. This can contribute to inflation rate. And that is the precise reason the World Food Program has called for tenders. It has called for tenders in order to supply rice in countries such as Spain, Algeria, Togo, and Cameroon. They want to procure the rice and supply to these countries: Spain, Algeria, Togo, and Cameroon. And there is a concern that if these supplies from India will increase, inflation can be caused in India. And that is the reason many of these rice traders have approached an authority, DGFT. They have approached an authority, DGFT, and they have asked DGFT to allow them to participate in the tender and supply rice to the United Nations World Food Program. So these are certain very important points which are there in the newspaper regarding India, World Food Program, as well as the rice contributing to inflation in the domestic market. Next article, underemployment is a problem for India, says Arvind Panageria. And by the way, if you're wondering, if you're thinking, who is Mr. Arvind Panageria? He's a very well-known economist in India, and more recently, he has been appointed as a chairman of the 16th Finance Commission. Now, what are the important points here? What are the important points? Point number one, in case of India, there is always a discussion that India suffers from the issue of unemployment. There is always this concern that India suffers from the issue of unemployment. What Mr. Arvind Panageria has been advocating, has been discussing, or has been mentioning for multiple times now is that no, for India, bigger issue is not unemployment. The bigger problem for India is underemployment. Bigger problem for India is underemployment. Now, many of you will be thinking, sir, what is this unemployment? What is this underemployment? Is there any difference? Of course, yes. Unemployment, again, very simple definition, not a technically sound one. Unemployment simply means you are willing to offer your skills, you are willing to offer your services to the market, market doesn't want to utilize the services, right? You have skill sets, but they do not want to use them right now. So they will not be paying you money. That is basically unemployment. On the other hand, underemployment. Underemployment basically, please understand, there can be multiple types of underemployment. For example, please have a look at it. Underemployment can be hidden underemployment, hidden underemployment, and underemployment can also be disguised unemployment. Underemployment can be hidden unemployment. It can also be disguised underemployment. Now, many of you will ask me, sir, what do you mean by hidden underemployment and disguised underemployment? Let me give a very simple example. Generally, generally it is said that developing countries experience structural unemployment. Is it okay? I'll repeat my statement. Generally, right, traditionally it has been found that developing countries experience unemployment. That is structural unemployment. Now you will ask me, sir, what do you mean by structural unemployment? Structural unemployment simply means because of shortages in the economy, because of problems in the economy, such as, let's say, agriculture sector is not very well developed, the tertiary sector is not very well developed, the industrial base is very small, very narrow. Because of such problems in the economy, because of such issues in the economy, the demand for labor will be very, very less. And this is generally observed. This is generally observed in the developing countries. And that is the reason it is stated that the developing countries such as India experience structural unemployment. In fact, UPSC, right, had asked a question on the similar lines of structural unemployment. Now come to the point here. One of the as a result of these structural issues in the economy, we will also experience underemployment. Now, what are the types of underemployment? There are two types, I said, hidden underemployment as well as disguised underemployment. For example, imagine a person is there, he is a graduate, he wants to join labor force, he wants to join a company, he wants to work full time in an organization. And obviously, because you earn full time, you are working full time, you will have certain amount of salary. Now, what if in the market, such kind of jobs, full time jobs are not available? And because such types of jobs are not available, the person, rather than working full time, will opt for part time jobs. Rather than working full time, the person will opt for part time jobs. That is basically, let's say he will be working 3 to 4 hours a day. He will be working for very limited amount of time, not as a full time worker. So whenever the person works part time, this is called as that is a disguised underemployment. And what about hidden underemployment? What about hidden underemployment? Whenever you are not going to use right, all of your qualifications. Understand this. You have very high qualification. You have very, very high qualification, but you are not going to, you are applying for a job and you will get a job which requires very low qualification. So the qualification that the person has is much higher than the qualification or the requirements of a job. So this is basically called as hidden underemployment. And the issue is very simple here. Whether you talk about hidden underemployment or disguised unemployment, etc., the issue is that the person's productivity will not be very high. For example, if I'm an engineer, I can join a software company full time as a worker. I can have very high productivity in the role. But if I'm working part time, or if I'm applying for a job where the qualification requirements are very, very less, automatically my productivity will be very, very less. So the issue of underemployment is very low productivity. Productivity will be very, very low. And in addition to this, Mr. Arvind Panigere also stated that in addition to this, one more concern in case of India has been that whatever investments we have, a lot of this investment is going into a sector which are very capital intensive. I'll repeat my statement. whatever investments are there, most of these investments are going into sectors which are very capital intensive, which means a sector which requires lot of investment. It has already attracted lot of investment. It will further attract huge amount of investment. So the expert says, Mr. Arvind Panigaria says, India is a country where there is a scarce capital availability. Capital availability is scarce, but the labor availability is abundant. Labor availability is abundant, capital availability is very scarce. So these are certain very important points regarding the article that has been mentioned here. If you like these initiatives, please hit the like button. And if you are yet to subscribe to our YouTube channel, kindly do it now. Thank you. Have a great day.